Sid Mallya, and we're going to be talking about his latest book, his first book, I think. It's called
First book.
First Book. Congratulations on that, Sid.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
If I'm honest, so to start off, no lies in this book at all?
None.
None. All right. Okay. Now I think we've got that one out of the way. And you've also dismissed charges saying that this is a PR stunt to whitewash your image or to kind of remake it. And I have to say, it's not the most sensational book. It's not like you've spilled scandals and secrets. And I imagine many would pay good money for that.
Well, I mean, I think that, you hit on something. I was asked a question, is this a PR thing, right? And honestly, Shilpa, if I'm honest, that, it's a little bit offensive to be asked that, right? Because, I've gone and written a book here, and I don't know if you've read it or read any of it.
I've read the entire book.
Okay.
And yeah, I really find that you have bared your feelings and you've struggled to kind of stay honest as well. And I think you've made a lot of clarifications in that respect. So I think this is your attempt to kind of put your side of the story out and to tell people what's been going on inside of you while they've been watching the media images from the outside.
Well, I mean, I think it's, I was honest about everything in that book, that to go as deep as I have in that book, you don't see many people doing it in India.
I agree because you really go into feelings.
For sure. And I don't really, I laugh at myself. I'm self-deprecating. I talk about my insecurities. I talk about my fears. So when someone asks me, is that a PR stunt? You can imagine it's a little bit insulting because, I've gone and done something that could help a lot of people here. And I'd like to think it's a brave thing to do by going and writing so openly and honestly about everything that I've gone through. And it's as I said, if I'm honest, this is it. You might have an image of me from the outside, but this is really what I'm like. This is what's gone on for me. This is what I've struggled with. And look, if this can help someone else feel less alone, then great.
And you also address how people, who could react to it saying, oh, boo-hoo, poor little rich boy, and why, the money doesn't really have anything to do with depression or mental health.
No, it doesn't. And as I try to state in the book, that mental health doesn't discriminate. Like, you can be male, female, Hindu, Muslim, British, Indian, Chinese, rich, poor, whatever, 50 years old, 15 years old, everyone can suffer. I mean, we're looking at this like right now. We've just seen this in the world. You look at the athletes, Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, who are at the top of their games, right? Naomi Osaka, I think last year was the highest paid female athlete in the world, #1 tennis player, Grand Slam champion, 23, 24 years old. Yet she pulled out of some of the biggest tournaments because of her mental health. And she had the courage to say that, actually, you know what, I need to look after myself. And I think it's people like that, hopefully my book, that will continue to show people that, look, what you see on the outside, I don't want to use a pun here, but I think it's probably the most appropriate, which is don't judge a book by its cover, right? Which is what you see on the outside doesn't always tell the full-on story of what's going on internally.
And I think you've been speaking about mental health for at least a year now. And do you think in that period of time, you also had an Instagram series called Consider This, which I think could be the seed for this book, as you mentioned. Do you find that people have been more accepting of the fact that perhaps you can also be having troubles of your own, especially mental health troubles? Because, I can imagine you being told many times that you have it all or you have so much. What could you want for?
Well, yeah, I think that's what might consider this. So there's a few things on that. The first is that how it came about is when I stopped drinking. And I put up an Instagram post saying it's been, a year since I stopped drinking. It's been 3 years now.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. And a lot of people got back to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like if you, who comes from the background that you do, can stop drinking, then so can we. And I think that kind of ties into what you're saying, is that a lot of people were like, oh, okay, he can also go through these things, therefore so can I. And that's what I've realized with the Consider This series and this book. Like, if you see in this book, this is not a self-help book. And the Consider This episodes were not self-help episodes. I make it a point to say this is not a self-help book. This is just me sharing my story with you in an open and transparent manner, because what I've found is that a lot of people just want to feel like they're not alone. And whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's anyone sharing their story, people want to be like, oh my gosh, I went through that when I was a kid. They also went through that. Wow, suddenly I no longer feel like I'm so alone, or feel like I always thought there was something wrong with me, but oh my gosh, you went through it as well. It's strength in numbers, isn't it? That's what most people are looking for. It's just knowing that you're not alone.
And I also like that time and again, even in Consider This, that's your series on mental health, or this book, you've clarified that you are not a mental health professional, that you're not qualified to give advice, that you're not here to give advice, right? And that this is you talking about your journey.
Yeah, and I feel like, but I feel like that's the best advice I can give. Is by the I'm not Jay Shetty or Eckhart Tolle or Michael Singer with The Untethered Soul, which fantastic books, right? This is not like the Sidhartha Mallya method of enlightenment. Like, this is not that. This is like what I found is where what I found with my Consider This series is that people like the fact that a lot of people say to me, they're like, what we like about you, Sid, is the way that we feel like you're actually talking to us directly. And I felt like, okay, well, that's the strength that I bring to the table here. So how did I achieve that? All right, I achieved it by being open and honest about my own issues. And that's why I was adamant in this book that I was like, the best help I can offer is just to show you that I've gone through these things, and maybe you'll feel less alone.
Well, I feel like you made some big revelations in the book. Many, of course, would be shocked by the fact that you're a teetotaler. You have been for the last few years. You've spoken about it at length in this book. We've spoken about it before, last year when we did a previous interview. I can imagine that is something that really kind of shocks people. Even now, today, Sid, the fact that you don't drink.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I think it's A, because of the background I come from, and B, because it's just like, how does a 34-year-old not drink? Like, that's kind of the culture that we're in. So it's not even to do with me, it's to do with, you don't drink more. And I'm like, I think you've each has got to find what works for them. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Just because everyone else does it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Right? And I like how you say, be the king of your own good times.
Yeah, I thought that was a great line, that was. Yeah. And they're probably going to try and steal it, aren't they? Should have copyrighted it.
I know. And, apart from that, you also make some big revelations, like your relationship with your mother, for instance. I honestly didn't know much about your mother. Not much was said in the media. And you also spoke at length about your relationship with her and about your relationship with your father. Were those some difficult portions to write?
They were difficult portions in that I didn't ever want it to come across that I was angry towards them. I mean, I think I did that, like, especially in the portions that I talk about how I felt, but then I also talk about what I learned about why I felt the way I did. Right. And I think that's important, is to be like, it was important to talk about my growth. Like, this book was not meant to be like and I was very mindful of this when I started writing, which was, this is not going to be about, because if you see in the book, I don't even I barely name any. I think I named two of my friends, Ashish and Ed. Apart from that, I don't name anyone by name. And the reason is because I was like, this is not about accusing anyone. This is not that book. This is about talking about what happened and how I learned from it.
And, many could say that perhaps you've written this to absolve your dad, but, I find that you've written about his other family, his second family. You've spoken about, your relationship with him. And I don't think at any point you are trying to absolve him. So I think, that criticism is invalid. In fact, you talk about the kind of long, heartfelt talks that you've had with him. And I feel like it's a very honest book to put out to anybody who could read it. Don't you feel like it would be used against you?
I think everything in life is in the wrong hands. No, I said the wrong fans. Everyone, there's always going to be people that are going to find things to use against you, right? You can't please everyone. You can't. Some people are going to read this book and be like, wow, like, oh my God, I resonate with it. And I've got messages from people who've already finished it. I mean, it came out 2 days ago and people are like, thank you for writing this. Like, honestly, like deep, thank you for writing this. I feel seen. I got someone else wrote a review on it saying on Amazon or something being like rich kid problems. So the fact of it is that guess what? Both of them are right because it's art and it's subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's what they think of it.
But I think to be accused that if you don't like the book, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But to say that I did it as a PR stunt or to change my image or to absolve my dad, like, just read the content in it. Like, why would I have talked about any of this stuff in such depth if I was trying to change my image? Would I talk about being depressed? Would I talk about living with OCD and being mocked for it at school? Would I talk about why I stopped drinking, how I used to go to Diageo? Like, trust me, none of this paints me in a great light. So if this was a PR stunt, like Divya will tell you right now, we could have done something a lot better than this.
No, you also speak at length about OCD that you mentioned, and the different kinds that you manage. That's one of the toughest revelations I can imagine to make to the whole world.
Yeah, and that exactly coming to your point, which is that if I was trying to change some image of myself that I was this like cool guy, why would I talk about any of this?
Fair enough, yeah, absolutely. But I'm sure those are some reactions that have come in, like you mentioned in the Amazon review. But
I don't know if it was an Amazon review. It was somewhere I read. It might have been on Instagram or something that someone sent me, but it was.
But that was one comment. But what has been the overwhelming sentiment in reaction to your book?
Huge, like so positive. And it's kind of like the reaction I got to the Consider This series is that people are like, just thank you for doing this. Like, the most gratifying is I wrote this in the book, and the OCD thing is that I remember when I spoke about OCD in the Consider This, and someone messaged me being like, I cannot believe you're talking about this because I literally felt like I was weird as a child growing up. And when you hear messages, so they're like, so thank you for sharing this. Now I feel like, oh my gosh, I wasn't alone. And those are the messages that make you feel good because you're like, that's it. Like, I just want to help people with this book. Like, there's nothing to gain from it than helping people.
I also found it very brave that you speak about your acting ambitions so much. And you've spoken so candidly about them. People are usually, especially in the industry, like, I went with a friend who'd gone to audition for the role, and the director spotted me, and I was cast. But you have actually spoken about your struggle to get a foothold in the industry, how you've gone to class, how you've gone to acting school, and that I find that also pretty brave to write about, or feel like you haven't cracked, right? Because you are still trying to make a name for yourself in.
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned that. That again highlights the point that if I was trying to whitewash my image, why would I talk about the failures I've had? Right? And it's the book title, I think, gives it away, if I'm honest. And that's exactly what this book is. It's honest. It's my truth. And that was when I was writing this. Originally, I was going to call it Consider This, right? And continue it on from the series. And then one day it literally just clicked. I was like, no, if I'm honest, that's the title of this book.
And I think that sums it up very
Because I kept writing, right? When I was speaking and writing, I was like, if I'm honest, if I'm honest, if I'm honest. And I was like, hang on a second, this is what this is. And honesty means exactly that, being honest. Not tweaking the honesty to suit what you want to portray. Well, then it's not honest, is it?
Well, I think it really does come out that you've gone through multiple drafts to be as honest as possible in this book. Now, I have to ask, what's next on your platter? Is it going to be acting? Will you come back to India? What's next? Will you write another book?
We'll see. Let's see how this one does first. I think that if I can continue helping people, then I'm always open to doing anything. If that's in the form of another book or I don't know what else it could be, but as long as I can continue helping people, I'm open to all avenues.
Oh, that's lovely. So if anybody needs help, you know who to reach out to. There's one person willing to help.
Yeah, and I think it's not just that. If I can say that, this is a video interview, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
people will watch this. So if I can just
Yeah.
say to your viewers, like one thing is, just be there for one another. You don't need to fix people. You don't need to offer advice. A lot of the time when people have issues, they just want to hear, they just want to talk about it, and they just want someone who listens. So just be there. Don't impose yourself. Be like, hey, look, if you've got something going on, I'm here if you want to talk about it. You don't have to fix it. Just listen. That's it. That's what we can all do to help one another, is become better listeners and to help people feel like they're not alone.
And I think you've written about that as well, how to be a good listener. And if you want to know more, you have to pick up a copy of Sid's book, which is out right now, If I'm Honest. Thank you so much, Sid. It was fun talking to you.
And you, thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.